Last week, the federal government announced that all open net salmon farms off the coast of BC will be shut down by 2029, which has sparked criticism from Indigenous leaders. One Indigenous leader went so far as to say that the push for the ban is nothing more than caving into, quote, millionaires, activists, and special interests. But those in support of the ban, such as actors William Shatner and Ryan Reynolds, have argued that these salmon farms are environmental nightmares and a stain on Canada's reputation. I'm now joined by Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, Director at the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Now, Dr. Charlebois, what exactly is open net salmon farming?
Well, essentially, it's to cultivate salmon in the ocean with nets, compared to having land-based basins, essentially. And typically, those operations tend to cost more. In fact, there are two cases in the Atlantic where I am, where two companies have actually gone under receivership recently, because operations are quite costly. That would be Sustainable Blue and Sapphire. And so risks are much higher with land-based operations due to higher costs. And that's why companies tend to prefer open pens, just because costs are typically more under control.
And what do you make of the claim that the ban is giving in to millionaires and environmentalists at the expense of Indigenous communities? And just how important are these operations for Indigenous communities in BC?
It is a divisive issue for sure amongst indigenous communities. Some communities are actually in favor of the ban, while others aren't. In fact, there are over 20 communities that do have very strong partnerships with companies. And so I think this issue is largely misunderstood when you actually look at some of the new technologies that have been used in recent years. The rhetoric that appears to be shared in the media is based on facts that go back a few decades or in the last decade, but a lot of things have actually improved since then, making open pens less risky, if you will, for the environment. But the bottom line, from a food security perspective, this may very well mean that most of the salmon consumed in Canada will be imported, which would increase the carbon footprint of that category, and also it could increase the cost of salmon overall in Canada.
And can you explain to us what the alternative to those farms are? And do we have any understanding of the costs related to those alternatives?
So if you go land-based, so if you ban open pens, and now Ottawa is giving these companies 5 years to transition, you're likely going to see salmon costs, the production of salmon go up in price for sure. And at retail, we did some comparisons in recent months, and typically the difference retail is anywhere between 40 to 60%, which is really important. And so when you think about food service, when you think about retail, chances are you're going to be making salmon less of an attractive product for consumers. And if you look at Canada's food guide, it is certainly one product that is pushed and encouraged to be consumed by Canadians.
And how does open net farming compare environmentally to the alternatives? Is there merit to the arguments of people like William Shatner?
I saw the video. It's not necessarily my area of expertise, and I don't have any recent data in terms of how sea lice could impact wild stock. But there is a difference between wild fish, or different in terms of perceptions between wild caught fish and cultivated fish for sure. And of course, most people prefer wild, and they actually associate wild with natural, and they think that you can't replicate that in an aquaculture context, if you will, with open pens. But that's not necessarily true. You can actually produce a lot more effectively, and feed more Canadians at an affordable price.
We know that food security is a big part of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Does the 2029 phase out ultimately hurt that reconciliation goal?
I would say so. I mean, just the video that we saw this weekend, the tone of the video makes for a very tone deaf conversation between Canadians and Indigenous communities. I think it was just wrong. It was just a wrong tone, and of course, the decision was done on National Aboriginal Day of all days.